The registration and deregistration of political parties are governed by the Constitution and, by extension, the Electoral Act, with the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) empowered to oversee their registration and regulation. The issue of party deregistration remains controversial. Now, while some argue that it promotes accountability and reduces the proliferation of inactive political parties, others believe it can be used to weaken political opposition and limit democratic competition. Now, the central question, therefore, is: are political party deregistration simply a legal requirement, or can it become a political weapon by various political players and political actors, like we would like to say? Now, tonight on Correro, I'm being joined by the person of Barrister Wali, and also Dr. Sali Iko Sani Uma. Sule, I beg your pardon, Iko Sani Uma, and Dr. Peter Ede, and they will be helping us to put all of this issue in perspective. But we'll begin the conversation tonight immediately after this break. Please stay with us as the conversation begins after now. And you're welcome back. Now, before we went on that break, I told you I have gentlemen here with me in the studio that will be helping us put all of these issues in perspective. Well, Dr. Sule Iko Sani, it's a delight to have you join me on Correro. Good evening.
Good evening.
And of course,
good evening, Nigeria.
Yeah, Barrister Wali Ibrahim, it's a delight to have you join me on Correro. Good evening.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure joining you as well.
All right, so let's begin the conversation for tonight. Let's even begin with you, Dr. Sule Iko. Looking at the recent happenings in Nigeria right now, of course, you agree with me that deregistration has become the burning issue on almost every lip right now.
Yeah.
But what's your stand on party deregistration in Nigeria today? Is it primarily an instrument of legal compliance, or just a political weapon by the majority political party to oppress the not too political party? Let's get your stand on this.
It's actually a kind of misconception. The fact is, when you want to register a political party, or when you want to actually adopt a political party, there are guidelines, which you must embark to follow to ensure a total either takeover or merger or whatever you call it. In the event of doing that, there are a lot of regulations, because we are not a lawless country. You have to follow the rules to ensure that all necessary rules governing the guidance and guidelines given by INEC and the constitution of the country is complied with. In the event there is a problem along the way, you actually err in one, either the existing party owners or the merger partners or your opponent can take advantage of that and actually decide to sue you. And that's what's happening with the few experience I have seen around. The recent one, the one of NDC. From what I understand, they took a logo of an organization. And the organization kept quiet. The moment they started, they actually took them to court. Is it PMP or one organization that had a logo? So they took them to court, even though when the ruling was done, as at that time, they were not disallowed from registering. But that's a legal issue. However it is, the moment an issue goes to the court, it's already bringing a bottleneck to an organization or a party or whatever it is. So they should have actually considered that and actually avoid that. And the second one, of course, is the ADC. You can see it's a national issue, leadership issue, where you come to my house, you're trying to take over my party, there has to be some form of consensus among the old leaders of the party. I think that hasn't gone very well. That's why some of them have decided to go to the court and actually seek redress. And that has actually brought bottlenecks to the party itself. So these are the few examples I know. So for anyone to think that the party registration happening, and of course, there are rules in the INEC. INEC has its own independence. It has a rule that if you don't meet a certain regulation, certain guidelines over a period of time, you'll be deregistered. So people take advantage of that and decide to go to court and seek redress.
Doctor, we will come to that part of that rules of INEC. Let's even talk to Barrister Ibrahim Wali at this point. Well, based on the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended, and the Electoral Act, what measurable legal benchmark should determine whether a political party deserves to be registered or deregistered. And furthermore, can we now say that this whole quagmire within the political space is further strengthening the Nigerian nascent democracy?
All right. Thank you for those questions. Very insightful questions that require an equally insightful response. Obviously, the 1999 Constitution and the Electoral Act, together with the INEC regulations, because the INEC usually are empowered to make regulations, regulates and guide the registration of political parties. The Constitution, obviously, Section 40 allows people to come together and associate and register for a political party. Section 222 and 223 goes on further to give it flesh as to, okay, what type of persons or what type of characters should a political party registration unfold on. If you look at the Constitution, what it requires is more national, in the sense that it requires that any association that's coming together to register as a political party must have a national front. You must ensure that in your leadership you have at least 2 over 3 of the entire states in Nigeria occupied properly to ensure federal character. You must ensure, especially with regards to names and logos, that they are not divisive. They are not, you're not seen to be maybe a regional or a one-sided political party or a religious-based political party. So these are general laws in the Constitution that allows for the registration of a political party. But the Electoral Act and INEC regulations goes on to flesh out, the details as to what is required to register a political party. If you look at Section 75 of the Electoral Act, for example, it requires that you have to file a formal application with INEC, and you have to ensure that you have a constitution, you have to ensure that you have your manifesto, you have your headquarters in Abuja, you have to submit your name, your logo, your abbreviation, and certain things, and INEC has to have to go through all of these to ensure that whether you're befitting of registration or not. But in terms of clear provisions that deregisters a political party, because before you are deregistered, it means you must have registered. There are conditions for registration, and then there are conditions for deregistration. Only Section 225 sort of clearly gives us, of the Constitution, gives us, certain thresholds for deregistration. And I think that is with regards to, if we are interpolating an example with regards to the recent cases, that is, the issue with the ADC, 225, whether or not they have won 25% they had 25% of presidential elections, the last elections, and there was arguments as to whether or not the conditions are injunctive or disjunctive. But yes, those have to do with electoral performances of existing political parties. But the main criteria, the main constitutional allowances also in the Electoral Act, are these federal character provisions. My own issue is with regards to, especially this NDC, for example, with the fact that, deregistration stemmed out of a logo issue. My own understanding is that there is no clear provision of either the Electoral Act or the Constitution that prescribes deregistration where there is there's an issue when it comes to the logo. For example, I believe that regardless of whether they had, local standing, would come to whether there was local standing or not, I believe that the conclusion of the court, whichever way, when it comes to the registration of a political party, which is a constitutional right guaranteed by Section 40, Section 222, the conclusion of a mismatch or of a claim or dispute in logo should not be deregistration. That is the
let's even, before you talk about the NDC, recall that we have 5 major political parties that were deregistered by Justice Lifu. Sometime talking about Justice Peter Lifu, sometime in last month. Now, looking at the Accord parties, ZLP and ADC, Action Alliance, and Action People's Party that were deregistered, there tend to be a lacuna even in the Constitution, and also a lacuna in the Electoral Act. Now, going by Section 75 of the Electoral Act in itself, subsection 4 of the Electoral Act. Now, there is a lacuna in that section. Now, it contradicts Section 225, subsection A of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now, I understand that when the law it contravenes or clashes with the Constitution, the grand norm takes the precedence in that particular instance. But in this particular case, Justice Lifu relied heavily on Section 225, Section 74, subsection 4, and also on provisions of Federal High Court Civil Procedures Rules of 2019. Can we say that Justice Lifu was right in taking that stand of deregistration of political parties, knowing fully well that the case is before a superior court?
So the issue with the matter before Justice Lifu is that up till now, the court has not, or rather, there ought not to have been a conclusion and substance of the case, right? So Justice Lifu went ahead, even though there was a order from the Court of Appeal staying the proceedings of the Federal High Court pending when the Court of Appeal makes a decision on whether or not the Federal High Court has jurisdiction, went ahead to give a decision on the substance of Section 225 of the Constitution, arguing that these parties do not satisfy the conditions, the requirement of the Constitution. Now, whether or not that is true has been overshadowed by the fact that he went ahead, even against the judgment of the Court of Appeal, to make a decision all the same.
So he erred.
Yes, so he erred in that regard, but that does not solve the substantive issue itself, or that does not conclude the substantive issue itself. If there was no pre-existing judgment of the Court of Appeal, if he had, obeyed the Court of Appeal and allowed them to go and finish their appeal and come back, and then he will give a judgment based on his substantive case, then we wouldn't have had the fracas that we had. The fracas was simply because he disobeyed the court. But in terms of also the soul of Section 225, the argument remains, twofold. On one hand, people are claiming that the conditions stated in the section, because the section has, you must have one, even if it's one local
government, yes. So that's why, because it sounds very contradictory.
But the argument now, on one hand, is that you have to read them in an injunctive manner. That means all the provisions must exist at the same time.
Okay, so at this point, we can't give it a literal interpretation. We will have to give it a purposive approach to the interpretation of that section. Well, let me allow you to hold your thoughts there. Let me come to Dr. Sule. So, Dr. Sule, there have been speculations from critics largely saying that the opposition party, the APC, the ruling All Progressive Congress, is deliberately setting the pace for minority political party or not to political party to disappear into the oblivion. From when the ruling APC took over power in 2015 till date, we've seen political parties shrinking. In 2019, I beg your pardon, we had about 91 political parties that were registered. And after that, we've seen the numbers keep dwindling. And right now, we have about 22 political parties. In the light of all of this, is the All Progressive Congress deliberately trying to silence opposition parties?
These are actually some of the words of opposition. Speculations and imaginary thoughts. The fact is very simple, just like my brother here said, the guidelines are there. And we're not a lawless country, And if you want to register a party and you have actually taken a logo of another party, and that party or organization decide to go to court, that alone is actually a problem for you. That alone. For the fact that there's even a pending case, even if there was no ruling or it was ruled that they allowed the NDC to go and register, because according to the findings I had, that the judge allowed that the registration of NDC should go ahead. That was the ruling. That's what ahead of Lokoja, right? So which means the case was still, these guys were not heard. From what I heard on the news is that he's now actually backtracking on his position because he felt that the other parties were not heard. It is actually the opinion of the lordship.
You mean the peace movement party were not heard in Lokoja?
Yeah. So, but that's a totally different thing. So how is the issue of PMP, an NDC issue and logo issue got to do with the APC?
Okay, so let me put it. Let me land. Okay, please.
Then the speculation, when you have opposition that is very strong, is actually the ruling party that is actually performing. In a nutshell, is normal for you to have very weak opposition. That's a fact. The only way opposition will be strong is when you provide what they call policy alternative. Tell me one opposition party today in Nigeria that has churned out one opposition political and policy view of any of this current government to say, okay, you have brought out a policy about maybe FX and this is actually what we'll do better. Or you have introduced fuel subsidy. This is what you are doing. Or you have reducing NEL fund, a loan for students. This is what we could do better. Or we are introducing agri loan for farmers. This is what we can do better. This is how opposition function. Opposition doesn't function about seeking and shouting about power and getting a party structure.
Well,
that's not how opposition
Well, Dr. Sani, you forgot to also look at the point of the critics. Of course, the other side of the divide.
Okay.
Now, they raised a concern.
Okay, which
part of
is
the concern is the concern has been that few days after NDC was recognized by INEC and registered based on the local jazz court, the court judgments, when they got the certified true copy, 3 days after, NDC started having issues, legal battles here and there. The logo, the formulators and the owners of the logos were quiet until they were formally recognized. And equity did not play out.
That's your perspective.
No, I'm just giving you where critics stand on this issue.
Okay.
Now, few months after the merger of ADC, legal battles began. Same thing, same quagmire, same trajectory played out in Labour Party. Labour Party became divided into 4 different factions. And this tend to spring when these parties become so formidable and they are trying to challenge the ruling All Progressive Congress. Don't you think that the political parties or the critics are right with this assertion? A voice, a party that is tend to be a strong opposition tries to challenge the ruling party.
Let me highlight some of the point or position where some of this speculation may arise.
All right.
Look at the case of NDC and PMP in the Federal High Court in Lokoja. Is ADC a party? Is any member or a director or any of the board members in a PMP a member of the APC? The answer is no. Is there any other person connected to APC that's actually a party to that suit? And the answer is no. Let me go back to other parties that are having factions. If Labour Party decide to imagine they were going to win election in 2023 and they work so hard they actually got some number of seats, and other people felt that the only way they can actually grab power in their respective constituency is by challenging the total control of the party in the center. By challenging, okay, fine, if you are not with Mr. A, you are certainly going to be emerged as candidate. So people will start challenging each other, even within the local structure of the party. It happened even in APC, when the merger happened, people that were disgruntled that lost out, some of them went to court. CPC, ACN, and ANPP, there were issues. But the issues is that some of them were signatory, including ABGA, to actually the formation of APC. So at that point of formation, that is when every legal lacuna needed to be sealed. The moment that is taken care of, you are likely not going to experience any other court case. But look at all other ones and see the issues. Look at Labour Party. Look at the division in even PDP. How is it? Because if Mr. President decides to pick a candidate that he feels he does very well in the state and appoint him as a minister, that tells you that he's actually a national leader, he's looking for national government.
So you think their concerns are not genuine?
They are not, clearly. So you need to look at, we don't just look at speculation or sentiments, we look at facts. Just like my brother and the lawyers here said, you look at the issues. Look at the rules, look at the INEC rules, look at the Electoral Act, look at the Constitution.
Since you've taken us to the rules, Barrister, let's come back to the rules again. Section 75, subsection 4 of the Electoral Act, a very interesting section to even want to glance through right now. But based on that section, there have been a lot of arguments across board. The first part of the argument says that the legal framework tends to doesn't protect smaller and emerging political parties. Rather, it favors larger political parties and, of course, more established political parties. Now, going by that section and the rulings from what we've seen from the various courts right now, where does the law stand in all of this? Is this assertion correct to say that the law only favors larger political parties? Going by that section 75, subsection 4 of the Electoral Act.
So first of all, I believe that the Electoral Act is at least to the extent of section 75, so subsection 4, is objective to all political parties. The issue is that because it's a new law, subsection, it's a new law, so obviously if the conditions would change or would become a lot more strenuous, the newer political parties are going to suffer more because you're already established. So a new law means if you are going to register a new political party, you are going to register under that law. But both ADC, or all of APC, ADC and NDC were all registered under previous laws. Like NDC, for example, was registered under the 2026 under the 2022 Electoral Act. But I believe that the issue is actually looking at the cases, on their own and by their merits. I think that if you look at the case of the ADC, for example, one of the glaring issues and why people would naturally interpret it as interference by the ruling party is, for example, the case of the deregistration of the Constitution. Yes, the Constitution says, okay, the electoral umpire, that is INEC, shall have the discretion to deregister a party based on certain considerations, but it was an anomaly to see an association of former legislators having the low-cost standard to actually go to court to enforce INEC to deregister these political parties. And then when the Attorney General of the Federation also joins in as a plaintiff, so you begin to see that, okay, the government is definitely interested in this matter. And there are legal questions arising in the sense that, do they even have the low-cost standard? Because before you go to court, there must be an interest that directly affects you. So if you look at all of these things, you would wonder, do they have any interest directly affecting them? And even if you go to NDC's matter, for example, you would see that the PMP, right, I think, or PMC, the peace movement, were not in the initial case. They were not in the initial case when the NDC went to court and became registered. If you look at the judgment of the court mentioned that, especially when it was setting aside its own previous ruling, it mentioned that INEC's refusal to register NDC was on the basis of its logo. INEC already had prior information that somebody else tried to register previously with a similar logo, and that was its contention. That was why I did not want to register NDC. So NDC now went to court and sued INEC, and the court looked at the issues and decided that regardless, INEC should be registered. So that was the issue. So the court itself mentioned that INEC gave this information in the matter that, okay, these particular people tried to register with this, that is why we did not. But the court looked at it, but now the court is coming back to say that that information was not disclosed to it. But in the same judgment, it referred to INEC actually informing it of the fact that this party has. But all the same, if this party has a grievance, or these people, they have grievance regarding the logo, the proper channel would have been for them to file an appeal, to go to the Court of Appeal. First of all, file a motion to join as interested parties, where the court are going to look at, okay, where does your interest stem from? Is it direct? Is it close enough? And then if the court agrees, it would allow you to appeal. But I think the anomaly is them being allowed to actually go back to the same court that gave the judgment, which was functus officio.
Does the National Forum of Former Legislature even have a local standing in this?
These are now the issues. The National Forum of they should not have.
The National Forum of Former Legislators.
The only way I see section 2,
because this is where the judgment is stemmed from.
It stems from. They are not a political party.
You want to react to it.
Why would they have? If
they're interested parties, they have a local standing on this matter.
They might be members of the same ADC that might have lost her in the course of the political exercise or the course of merger or acquisition or otherwise. This is the problem with parties. If you are a member of my party, and today I decided to say Barrister is going to be the chairman, and you know that if Barrister becomes the chairman, you have lost out your zone, you'll be disgruntled. That is politicians, that's how they think. The moment they are disgruntled, they start going to court for redress. The inability for the party to sit down to solve internal issues before they actually escalate to legal issues is actually the problem why opposition like that will happen. That is my own opinion. And Barrister mentioned something very interesting here, that the NDC went to court. I just want to ask questions because I'm not a lawyer.
That's what Barrister is here. Because if
I come out and the whole of people around, I tell people that I'm a madman, let's say in the morning, only after taking some Panadol, and in the afternoon I will come back and tell my neighbor, see, I'm not mad. Is he allowed? I don't know whether if a judge decides to err, he has erred in law. Maybe he made a mistake because some informations were not adequate to him. Is it legally allowed for the court, for the judge himself to actually go back to his case and say, no, I have not listened to A or B. I need to listen to them to get this. So maybe Barrister will be able to respond
before
to that.
Barrister quickly reacts to that, probably I think that issue borders on the rules of natural justice, which has to do with how they are to run patem, and also that's for the legal balance.
There's the substance of the law, but there's how it's applied.
All right, so let's not get too deep with that rules of natural justice right now, because we have a lot to even discuss. Because let me come back to you, Dr. Sule Iko. Now, Nigerian politics has been interesting because opposition have been allowed to have their say, even within the political space, and no matter how minority they are. But right now, deregistration is gradually shrinking political parties in Nigeria. If you look at the political space right now, should we be afraid that we are already tilting towards a one-party state when we have issues of this magnitude? Six political parties are facing deregistration, and these are the political parties that a lot of Nigerians find very interesting to want to associate with, based on Section 40 of the Nigerian Constitution. Should we be worried?
No, we shouldn't be. That's your perspective, and the question you need to ask yourself is that how many more how many political parties do we have in the entire, just like America?
22 political parties so far.
Look at
we have 22 political parties so
in
far.
America. There are over 100 political parties in the US, well over. And the only ones we hear are the principal Democrats and, of course, the Republican Party, isn't it? And a few independent in the respective party. Those other parties are still winning county and other election around the country. So many elections in most of the cities, some mayors, some state assembly, they are winning those elections. But let me tell you the challenge here. The challenge here is that most of our political parties, if they don't have a presidential candidate winning an election with that principal idea of presidential candidate, Nigerians.
But that section says, that's where the lacuna is. So, okay, please go ahead.
I said, most of them, they don't have it, they feel as if they don't exist. But the fact is, if you're a political party, you should have an ideology. An ideology doesn't have to be uniform among all political parties. There are many other political parties right now in the fold. Labour, even the Labour that you mentioned, they have their challenges. Labours have candidates all over. Even the PDP that is factionalized. There's a certain faction now that the INEC might have considered based on several legal issues, and they are the one presenting candidate at INEC portal right now. So the issue is, when the only reason why you leave your parent party to go to another party is to seek for power, you always see as if someone is muzzling you. Go and check the constituent, the entire members of this opposition party you mentioned. Where were they coming from? They were coming from party where they're even stable and they are very big where they are. But because they are seeking for power, they have dumped their ideology, they have canvassed since 2014, and they want power now. Those are the challenges we're having, and the propaganda that you hear all around about Central Party interfering is because they are imagining that they are not big enough. So every time they have a legal issue that does not favor them, any case you have in Nigeria today, you have a right. If I sue you today, Attorney General is the lawyer of the country, is a state. He can actually be joined in the matter to be able to come and protect your fundamental interest. Isn't it, Barrister? If I sue you today, for example, on an issue, the Attorney General has the powers to also intervene in the case to be able to defend you. Your fundamental human right is well safeguarded by our Attorney General of the country. Is that, I just want to get that.
Yes, the Attorney General can take over criminal cases.
Criminal justice system.
Only criminal cases.
Yeah. But in other
case, in the
civil cases, there has to be a connection to the office of the Attorney General.
Okay, so if a former legislature today...
Dr. Sule, let me come to Barrister on this, because it's very important, and our time, we don't have the luxury of time today. But then let's look at the judiciary in itself. Now, we're having a challenge. First, the challenge of regulatory compliance and political interference. That both are captured even in the Electoral Act in itself. But then there tend to be a thin line between regulatory compliance and political interference. At what point can a judge draw the line on party matters between regulatory compliance and political interference?
Well, for starters, the jurisprudence of electoral litigation or electoral cases, and in fact it is expressly stated in the Electoral Act itself, is that courts should lean towards allowing political activities to continue, allowing the political space to be enriched, allowing political participation to be guaranteed and encouraged. And that is why in the new law it says that if there is a pre-election matter in court, or if there's any matter relating to an election, the presumption is that what is regular at that point would continue, and courts should not give interim injunctions or interlocutory injunctions. They should actually wait, be patient, and listen to the case towards, to its satisfaction, to its complete satisfaction, before deciding one way or another to stifle democratic participation. So there's this is a jurisprudence, you can call it the objective principles of how courts are expected to approach political cases. And I believe that this is the problem so far in especially with regards to all of these cases. I don't think that the courts have been really cautious of giving political decisions one way or the other. For example, with regards to this NDC registration, I believe that the court ought not to have given any decision, but in favor or against, without fully adjudicating and actually understanding and actually evaluating and giving decisions on the issues. Because up until now, although when the court registered NDC, the logo issue was apparent. There's no.
I'm asking that question because right now a lot of Nigerians are saying that the judiciary is the real problem of Nigerian democracy.
At this
How
point,
correct is that?
At this point,
claim?
I have no choice but to agree.
That judiciary is the
At this
major
point, I have
problem.
no choice but to agree, because I don't see how you can justify the decision of the court against the NDC, for example. Likewise, I don't see how you can justify what Justice Lifu did. It was too apparent, it was too evident that they didn't have any direct interest in the case. They didn't have any jurisdiction outside of the court order that was already granted by the Court of Appeal. And when you come to the NDC as well, it was also very clear these other guys are not conducting an election. But if the court was to err on the side of caution, the court would have informed itself of the fact that, okay, this political party, the registration order that I granted had consequential effects in terms of this political party actually designing their structure, actually running their primaries, their conventions based on my order. So before I make a decision one way or the other, because don't forget, it didn't set aside NDC. It said, okay, let's go back to pre-judgment and continue the case. So what if NDC wins the case at the end? So they're not saying that, okay, because of this logo issue, we cannot register you, you have failed, you cannot participate in elections. It says, okay, let's go back, let's add these people to court, to the case, and then let's do the case. So what happens if the NDC ends up victorious, if, under the new regime of the case, whereby the court has already said, I have set aside my order without any consequential order that preserves their political momentum, that preserves their political participation? So it means the judge did not err on the side of caution. It means even if in the future it grants the NDC another registration, it must have halted its affairs. So it must have foisted a fait accompli on itself. That is the court. So, but if at the end, the court finds that, okay, they were not lawfully registered.
Well, Barrister, the Attorney General was joined in this matter.
Not that of NDC.
That of the 5 political parties that were deregistered.
He was joined as a plaintiff.
As a plaintiff.
So
he was joined on the plaintiff.
Only the INEC should have the locus
So
standing.
let me bring this back to Dr. Lifu. I said, sorry, I beg your pardon. It's Dr. Sule. I beg your pardon. Dr. Sule, recall we said before now that there are a lot of fingers that are pointed towards the APC, the ruling All Progressive Congress, saying that the APC is like when the witch cries in the night and the baby dies in the morning. That's such a scenario. The Attorney General was joined as a plaintiff to deregister 5 political parties. And you saying that the APC has no business, no hand in all of that. The APC also came out to carry out a press conference stating categorically clear that they have no business. The president of Moka, Felix, saying categorically that they don't have any business with what is happening with the minority political parties. But then again, the conversation gets interesting because more political parties are getting are being deregistered. I want to ask at this point: is the APC afraid of contesting a free, fair, and credible election?
Let me get something very clear, please.
Because all the fingers are pointed towards if the Attorney General is joined as a plaintiff on the case, when you have a situation where please help. I am not holding brief for opposition party.
So
please help us understand.
Let me put it this way to you. You have said it over and over that these political parties, the grounds for
deregistration
to go to court are actually there. The grounds for their deregistration is actually clearly stated in the Electoral Act. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm going to answer you this way. If the rules of Electoral Act are actually being violated, or a certain condition have not been made by a political party, and a member or a former legislature feels that the only body that will listen is the courts, and when we go to court, the only person that will ensure enforcement of every ruling of court could likely be Attorney General, and they decide to join Attorney General in the suit. How is that Attorney General, the Attorney General of Nigeria?
And the Attorney General did not remove himself from the case, knowing fully well as an appointee of the president.
Joined as a defendant, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, applied.
You see,
one of the people also suing the.
So I want to understand if we're saying that the AP, so we can put this issue in perspective.
Journalist Lifu, let me put it this way to you.
Journalist Godwin.
All right. I have a lot of respect for our institution of the judiciary, because some of us are actually a product in one way or the other of that particular organization, or that particular arm of government. So I'm actually being very careful over actually castigating opinion or judgment of any other person, because I'm actually not a lawyer. But I also want to be fair in both parties. Is it allowed for members of legislature or other bodies to actually sue, seeking for what you feel is their right to fight? Maybe some of them have lost out. I told you this. Some of them might have lost out in other parties in question. And politicians could be aggrieved. Have you realized that one of the cases that some of the judges had to deal with was actually a presidential candidate of even ADC that ran for office in 2023? He decided to go to court when he realized that the entire structure of the party that he had played is going away. He went to court. Why did he do that? To make sure he frustrated other people from entering that party. So, in a nutshell, I can tell you this. I won't be able to tell you whether this person has a local standing or that person should join the party or not. All I can tell you is, APC, you cannot give me one single evidence that APC is connected to either party, war, or factionalization or deregistration. There are over 21 political parties. People can run, right?
So you're saying at this point,
yes,
that the deregistration of political parties in Nigeria is not orchestrated by the ruling or progressive Congress.
I'm saying, and I'm putting it to you, give me one evidence.
It's not a political weapon.
It can never be. We are very popular. We're winning election everywhere. We have been winning. We have a policy that is very acceptable to Nigerians. We have challenges. It's normal. I can tell you that the challenges in every government doesn't start in one day and end in one day. I'm from this part of the country, and I can tell you, if you can give me 1,000 plus kilometer road from Sokoto to Badagry, you are telling my farmers that you are cutting the cost of their logistics by 50% to sell their product in the south. In the long run, you know what it will do to my economy. So I know what that. If you can actually try to do all this by fighting all the challenges, the only president in the history of Nigeria that is having bold policies. Everybody is scared of removing subsidy. He removed it. People are scared of police, state police. He's actually bringing it to the fore. People are scared of autonomy of local government. He's fighting it. So we're not scared of any other. We don't need to interfere. All we need to do is just to keep on convincing Nigerians. Please come to our fold. And let's actually give Mr. President as well the second time with some.
Well, today is not a day to talk about President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's
it's always a day for us to talk about it. Because every day is a day for us to wish
talk about
and pray that he comes back into
I'm here as a lawyer, and I feel like as a sympathizer to opposition parties, I feel like I'm at a disadvantage of sorts because I don't want to move from my loyalty to. Because I would love to respond to.
But it's okay. You're in Nigeria.
Well,
you're in Nigeria.
Let's use the legal balance that you don't have a local standing right now to respond to him because you are a lawyer in this regard.
I'm here for the law and
helping us to understand the legal perspective. Yes. But then again, I've been saying that our time is fast spent tonight. Well, it has been an interesting conversation, but then we've not even scratched the surface of the conversation. So permit me at this point to say that let's tag this to be the part 1 of this conversation. And of course, we will bring both the law and the political angle back to Kurero to help us create a balance again in this conversation, especially as events begins to unfold in the coming days. But on this note, I want to say thank you so much, Dr. Sule Iko Sami, for finding out time to be with us here on Kurero. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Barrister Ibrahim Wali, for being with us here on Kurero. I can see you still smiling because the conversation has not been enough. But then let's put a full stop for it on it tonight on that note. Well, viewers, this is how far we can go on the show called Kurero. Do not forget that you can leave your thoughts, you can leave your comment, you can leave your suggestions on our various social media handle currently showing on your screen. And you can also download the Rapid TV app from your Android and iOS devices to keep track of our broadcasts. My name is Godwin Sunday. Always remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Do enjoy the rest of your night rest. Bye for now.